My name is Noopooh. I represent the bladder of the Ethiopian race.
My name is Boonoo, Noopooh, and I represent the bone marrow in the Ethiopian race.
In space, matter, and time, and our race represent that as well.
I like that.
You know, I love my race, and I want to see us, get out of the spells that we're living under right now.
Okay.
The beginning and the end, which is basically the
right reason. And sound right reason means pure intelligence.
Always and let it be known.
Production.com. Production.com.
And another reason why we even on this topic is as Afro said, as Amanubi Rakabata in the Bible interpretation, that when all the questions been asked and answered about the Bible, then our people would be qualified to understand Noot science as a whole. But because of the spells and magic that been put on these books and various translations of it, is why people still stuck on the Bible. This is why you see people just going and going and going.
So, as we said before with the book of Revelations, right? Book of Revelations talk about they were trampled on the holy city for 42 months, right?
Yep.
Oh, what is that? But New York City was founded in 1624, right? 1624. That's when New York City was founded. There we go. A permanent European presence in the Netherlands began in what? 1624, right? That's when they came out, right? The Dutch came there first and made their presence, right? In 1624. To the date where they said that, hold on, let's go back to the book of Revelations because we got to keep going back and forth, right? So they said that they'll go and measure the temple of God and its worshippers, but exclude the outer court. Do not measure because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the city for 42 months. I will appoint my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. So, 400. There's something that happened in between these dates. Look at these dates. April 27, 1624 to Friday, April 27, 1973. Right? And that's approximately 4,200 months. This is actually 1 year from this particular date, which would be 1974. Right? So 42 months is actually 4,200 months according to the Bible, and I'm going to show you why. Now is where we're going to show you the 2 witnesses. I'm going to show you the 2 witnesses. I got to stop screen sharing. I got to pull it up. There we go. Here go the 2 witnesses right here. Let me screen share. know if you guys can see that. You can see that?
Yeah, World Trade Center.
So, remember what I was telling you guys about anthropomorphism, right? So anthropomorphism is basically when you give human attributes to non-human entities.
Welcome to Church Words, where we look at some of the Bible's most important words and discover their meanings. I'm Jake, and this is Allie, and today we're going to look at the word anthropomorphism.
Whoa. What?
Anthropomorphism.
How do you even spell that?
Like that.
Oh.
Anyway, what is anthropomorphism, and why is it a church word? Well, let's first define what it means. To start, let's look at the origin of the word. The prefix comes from the Greek word anthropos, which means human, and the root comes from the Greek word morph, which means form. So what does this word actually mean? Webster's dictionary describes anthropomorphism as an interpretation of what is not human or personal in terms of human or personal characteristics.
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, well, here's an example. Let's look at my favorite video game character, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Wait, what?
Hold on, I have a point here. Anyway, let's look at Sonic for a second. He's a hedgehog, right? But what's different about him from normal hedgehogs? Besides the fact that he's blue, he has more human-like arms and legs, human hands and feet, and has the ability to speak. These are all human attributes given to a non-human character, and this is a form of anthropomorphism.
Oh, well, that's cool. So, what's this got to do with God?
Well, knowing what we just learned about anthropomorphism, let's see if there's any example of that in the Bible.
What? Talking hedgehogs that run really fast?
Allie.
Sorry.
Anyway, the question we need to be asking is, has God ever been described with human attributes in Scripture?
I think so. Like when David said that the Lord is his shepherd.
Yeah, that's a great example. Another example is in Psalm 89 verse 13, which says, "Your arm is endowed with power, your hand is strong, your right hand is exalted." The psalmist is using human attributes like arms and hands to describe the power of God.
But does that mean that God actually has arms and hands like that verse said?
Nope. The Bible makes it very clear that God is spirit. He is not a physical being. He is beyond the realm of time, space, and matter. The reason anthropomorphism is used in Scripture is to help the reader better understand what God's like. Because God is limitless and far beyond what we can comprehend, the authors of the Bible often use human traits to help people better understand God's character. Here's an example that often gets misunderstood. In the creation story, we are told that God created everything within the first 6 days, and on the 7th day, he rested. Now this doesn't mean that on the 7th day, God decided to take a nap or went to sleep, but the author described God as resting as a way to show that God had ceased his work of creation on the 7th day.
Wow, so anthropomorphism is basically describing God with human qualities.
Exactly, and that's a word to remember.
So, also we have to understand that what do these figures mean to Caucasian society and the thriving of their culture and spirituality, right? So the two witnesses are the two twin towers that were in New York City, which is their holy city. The reason why the two twin towers are the two witnesses is because they're a representation of their financial structure. They're a representation of their spirituality and how they view spirituality. A lot of the words that they use are of their spiritual essence, right? So I'm gonna give you guys, give me a second real quick.
Subproduction.com.
Give me 1 second. Actually, we could just read a little bit about the World Trade Center, right? And we're gonna go more into it. The original World Trade Center was a large complex of 7 buildings in the financial district of Lower Manhattan, New York City. United States. It opened on April 4th, 1973, and was destroyed in 2001 during September 11th attacks. So let's go back to the date calculator, because remember they said that they were going to prophesize for what? 1,060 months. Let's see. From April 4th, 1973, they said it would open to.
Well, they said days. Well, the Bible said days.
Correct.
Well, go ahead. I was just letting it be known.
Yeah, no problem. Let me stop screen sharing that. We're going to go back to the calculator.
Production.com.
That's a building, right? Yeah.
That's the construction of the World Trade Center in 1971.
Gooch.
But one thing we have to understand is that this is all spiritual. Everything that you're seeing, like Noot said earlier, with the vampirism, all these jobs are vampires. You understand what I'm saying? When you're given 1/3 of your day to which is 33%, and that that's, remember they tell you 8-hour shift. 8-hour shift, 8 of 24 is 33%, 33rd and a third percent. So 33rd and a third percent gives you ghosts. Yep. You understand? They shouldn't be giving 33 and a third percent of your day to a job, because that drains your life and your vital energies. You understand? And then some of us go over that. We call that what? Overtime. Meaning you over your time already, and you still gotta, like myself. I'm in a vampire. I'm being bit, and they give you way less than what it is that you project out. You understand? So you being paid to do a job, but then you're being underpaid, and then not only you being underpaid, the tax, your IRS taking a piece of that too, to pay back the English government, or the English or whatever the case may be. That's a whole nother topic on a whole nother day. Like, we just trying to get through this real quick to help people understand that having a job is spiritual, and that it takes your vital and your vital energy and your life force, and it does nothing beneficial for us. And every time we pray, they're praying on us. Every time we, it goes into destroying who we are. And that's why you see a lot of times people, they age faster, or when they quote unquote retire, they pass away as soon as they retire. Why? Because you done used up your whole vital energy and vital life. All right.
I wanted to throw something in since you said that. Like you said, you got people that the job, they pray, and the job prays on us.
That's right.
So you know what I'm saying? You praying to the same financial vampire god that you working for, but don't see it because they have different names, and they don't realize it's all Leviathan. So that was all I wanted to add on, that you put that on there. You got one prayer going out and a prayer on the individual. Like you said, that was a good one, 33 and the third, because that, like you said, that's the number of ghosts that the 9 ball states, that the number of the Caucasian race is 333.
Yeah, and they take that 333 in the form of an 8. You understand that 8-hour shift or that schedule is 33 1/3% of your day, of your entire day. You're not supposed to work for 33 1/3% of the day. That's entirely too long. And on top of that, you're doing it 5 days a week, which is overwhelmingly too much. It's you're giving up way more than you're supposed to on a 5-day work week. All right, so let's get to the 1,260 number days that we have. All right, in the book of Revelation. So it says in March 1965, the Port Authority began acquiring property at the World Trade Center site. Demolition began on March 21st, 1966 to clear 13 square blocks of low-rise building Radio Row for its construction. Groundbreaking for the construction of the World Trade Center took place on August 5th, 1966. The site of the World Trade Center was located on a landfill with the bedrock located 65 feet below. To construct the World Trade Center, it is necessary to build a bathtub with slurry wall and the West Street side of the site to keep the water from the Hudson River out. The slurry method, selected by the Port Authority's chief engineer, John M. Kyle Jr., involved digging a trench, and the excavation proceeded, filling the space with a slurry mixture composed of bentonite and water, which plugged holes and keep groundwater out. When the trench was dug out, a steel cage was inserted and concrete was poured in, forcing the slurry out. It took 14 months for the slurry wall to be completed. It was necessary before excavation of material from the interior of the site could begin. 1,200,000 cubic yards of excavated material were used along with other fill and dredge material to expand the Manhattan shoreline across West Street to form Battery Park City. And this is the important part right here. I'm only going to read the first sentence. It's January 1967, Port Authority awarded $74 million in contracts to various steel suppliers. So this is when things really start, in January 1967. Right? So now let's screen share from January 1967. Right? When the Twin Towers were crucified. And what do we have as a result right here? 12,672 days. If you round that off, you'll get 12,600 days, right? Which is the same number that you had in the Bible, which is 1,260, which is the days that they would be prophesizing for until they crucified them. Now, I know you're probably wondering, like, well, what is the prophecy that they were prophesizing? The prophecy that they were prophesizing was this.
Prophets.
This is the prophecy that they were prophesizing.
Prophets.
For prophet.
Yep.
A literally prophet.
Yep.
And these words are not like this, just no reason.
Yep.
This is what they were prophesizing. It's just a play on words. Capitalism is an economic system based upon private ownership of means of production and the operation for profit. Characteristics central to capitalism include private property, capital accumulation, wage labor, which is vampire blood sucking, voluntary exchange, a price system, and competitive markets. In capitalist market economy, decision making and investments are determined by every owner of what? Wealth, property, and production ability in financial and capital markets, whereas prices and distribution of goods and services are mainly determined by the competition in goods and services markets. And who is the one that owns the wealth, property, and the production ability in financial and capital markets? We already know who that is. So this is what they were prophesizing: capitalism. The two witnesses, which is alright, let me know if you see that blue screen. It's like a blue screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Alright, okay, here we go. Expand it. Does it look bigger now?
Yeah, it's a little, yeah. Hold on. I'm just
You see it?
yeah, it's showing.
Alright, cool. So this is a timeline. This is a timeline of the World Trade Center and how they even come about it, right? So this guy, our famous friend, right? In 1939, World Fair in Flushing, New York, World Trade Center Pavilion is dedicated to world peace through trade, which we know is impossible. Trading with them is not going to create no world peace. In 1959, Downtown Lower Manhattan Association is created by real estate developer who? David Rockefeller. To revitalize Lower Manhattan begins to promote the idea of world trade in a financial center in New York City. In January 1960, David Rockefeller presents a plan for a World Trade Center along the East River of Manhattan. The Port of Authority is commissioned to study the plan. So the idea for the World Trade Center comes from one of the sustainable developers and the UN's, one of the UN's major components and players, David Rockefeller. And I know a lot of people have heard of this particular individual and their families that run the world. The Rockefellers, the Bilderbergs, Tarnoon did a whole thing on these guys and what it is that they do as far as sustainable development and United Nations and all those things are concerned. But I wanted to show you guys that who's the main player in using or getting the construction for the Twin Towers built. So what were they prophesizing? They were prophesizing capitalism, right? So capitalism is the main player in which they were preaching on. That's the gospel. The gospel is colonialism, which is capitalism, which is the energy that thrives or drives the spirituality for Christianity. So this is what is taking place. So now we're going to the next phase. So they were
subproduction.com.
Alright. So now we've given you was given to read like a measuring rod and was told to go measure the temple of God and the altar which with its worshippers, which were the Dutch and the British. You had Verrazano. You had remember I told you about the name plurality. Let me screen share this again. Screen share this again so you guys can see that it's not just one person. It was the Dutch and it was the British that helped to orchestrate this whole thing. So, and the kings in Europe commissioned them to come here and do what they had to do. So when they say I was given to read like a measuring rod and was told go measure the temple of God and the altar with its worshipers, remember it was two colonizers that came here, the Dutch and the British, and we have to count from 1624 when they got here. You had Giovanni Verrazzano, they named the bridge after him, and Henry Hudson, they named the river after him. And the British came in and they named York after the Duke of York, which King James, the same one that commissioned the Bible, named it after his brother, the Duke of York, who eventually became a king as well. Alright? So the 42 months was the time in which the 42 months was the time in which they founded New York to the time that the two witnesses passed away. Then with 1,260 days was the time in which the Twin Towers were got the approval, the money approval to get built, to the time that they were destroyed. Alright? Then it says they were clothed in sackcloth. These are and the sackcloth just means tough clothing. They were built in steel. So hold on, let's go to sackcloth so we can see what sackcloth is. Sackcloth is a very coarse, rough fabric woven from flax or hemp. Basically, it's a rough clothing, meaning that they were built with steel. It was steel structures that they didn't think can be broken or could be taken down. But eventually, we know that the Twin Towers were taken down, right? So yes, they were in sackcloth, but sackcloth in this instance is steel. The steel, there were steel beams and steel structures that they didn't think could bring it down, right? And they are the two olive trees and the two lampstands, and they stand before the Lord of the earth, right? So the two olive trees and the two lampstands, they stand before the Lord of the earth. Basically what this means is that they are facing Europe. These two particular these two olive trees and lampstands, they are facing Europe, and Europe is their creator or the Lord of the earth. That's who is running this whole operation. Europe, overseas, the kings and the queens of Europe, they face Europe. All right. So that's who the Lord of the earth is Europe, and they are facing Europe. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouth and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. So whoever wants to harm the Twin Towers, what's going to happen is they're going to have a financial crisis, or you're going to have a situation where they will die financially. So apparently they say that the Twin Towers were taken down by Muslims from Afghanistan and these Middle Eastern countries. What have they been trying to do? They've been trying to grab their oil. They've been trying to grab all their financial natural resources in order to bankrupt them. And this is how they are being destroyed. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. You must die financially if you are trying to stop capitalism from thriving or going forward. The same thing like when they talk about socialism. If you look at any of the political debates and they talk about socialism, they like, no, we're not going for socialism and what's the other one that communism that Russia, communism, yeah. So they are very much against these particular aspects of of controlling people. So now we move on to they have the power to shut up the heavens so it will not rain during the time they are prophesizing. And they have the power to turn the waters into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as it wants. So what this means in this particular verse is that they have the power, or rather they sit in a place. Matter of fact, let's get to that right now. Let's get to that right now. Let's get to that. Can't stay on too long. I gotta we gonna split it up for another day. But after I give you guys this last part right here, we're gonna take a breather from it, because I done gave y'all a lot of information. It's a lot to digest. It really is. It really is a lot to digest. So we're gonna get to this now. Also, the Lord of the earth can also be this fella right here that I just screen shared. You guys see that?
The New York Stock Exchange.
Correct. There's also a video that I have that goes with this, right? The New York Stock Exchange, I'm going to read it real quick. The New York Stock Exchange, nicknamed Big Board, is the American Stock Exchange located at 11 Wall Street, Lower Manhattan, New York City, New York. It is by far the largest stock exchange by market capitalization of its listed companies at $30.1 trillion as of February 2018. The average daily trading value was approximately $169 billion in 2013. The New York Stock Exchange trading floor is located at 11 Wall Street and is composed of 21 rooms. They go to 3 used for the facilitation of trading. A 5th trading room located at 30 Broad Street was closed in February 2007. The main building and the 11 Wall Street buildings were designated National Historic Landmarks in 1978. Right? So, this is where things get a little spicy. History. The earliest recorded organization of securities trading in New York among brokers directly dealing with each other can be traced to the Buttonwood Agreement. Previously, securities exchange had been intermediated by the auctioneers, who also conducted more mundane auctions of commodities such as wheat and tobacco. On May 17, 1792, 24 brokers signed the Buttonwood Agreement, which set a floor commission set charge to clients and bound the signers to give preference to the other signers in securities sales. This is where the Bible gets their 24 elders from. These are the 24 people started New York Stock Exchange, which is the capitalist heaven. This is their heaven. The New York Stock Exchange is their heaven. As it goes, as if the stock exchange falls, that's hell. As it rises, it's heaven for the Caucasian. You understand what I'm saying? So these 24 brokers are the 24 elders that started the New York Stock Exchange, because the 24 elders are the ones that sit on the throne of God, and they're the ones that started the New York Stock Exchange, which is the largest. What if you read up here? It says the largest stock exchange by market capitalization, right? And these companies are listed at 30.1 trillion, and these companies are the ones that are constantly being what do they call it? They're constantly being traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So this is where they get the 24 elders from, or rather, this is the 24 elders. The 24 elders are the 24 brokers that signed the Buttonwood Agreement, which set the floor for the commission rate charge to clients. All right, the earlier securities traded were mostly governmental securities, such as what? War bonds from the Revolutionary War. And the first Bank of the United States stock, although Bank of New York stock was a non-governmental security trade in the early days. The Bank of North America, along with the first Bank of the United States and the Bank of New York, were the first shares traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Alright? So that's how the New York Stock Exchange started. They started from these 24 elders, or the 24 stockbrokers that gave us the New York Stock Exchange, and that is the heaven of capitalism. This is where all the money and everything happens. This is why on every news channel you see all these numbers being flipped upside down. Oh, the market is down today. You understand what I'm saying? The market is up today. So when the market is down, or when they go through a Great Depression, right? They're not talking about a depression of people. They're talking about a depression of the New York Stock Exchange, as if they have feelings. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the Great Depression and the rising of the stock market being that's also the heaven.
In the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company employed hundreds of ships to trade gold, porcelain, spices, and silks around the globe. But running this massive operation wasn't cheap. In order to fund their expensive voyages, the company turned to private citizens, individuals who could invest money to support the trip in exchange for a share of the ship's profits. This practice allowed the company to afford even grander voyages, increasing profits for both themselves and their savvy investors. Selling these shares in coffee houses and shipping ports across the continent, the Dutch East India Company unknowingly invented the world's first stock market. Since then, companies have been collecting funds from willing investors to support all kinds of businesses. And today, the stock market has schools, careers, and even whole television channels dedicated to understanding it. But the modern stock market is significantly more complicated than its original incarnation. So how do companies and investors use the market today? Let's imagine a new coffee company that decides to launch on the market. First, the company will advertise itself to big investors. If they think the company is a good idea, they get the first crack at investing and then sponsor the company's initial public offering, or IPO. This launches the company onto the official public market, where any company or individual who believes the business could be profitable might buy a stock. Buying stocks makes those investors partial owners in the business. Their investment helps the company to grow, and as it becomes more successful, more buyers may see potential and start buying stocks. As demand for those stocks increases, so does their price, increasing the cost for prospective buyers and raising the value of the company's stocks people already own. For the company, this increased interest helps fund new initiatives and also boosts its overall market value by showing how many people are willing to invest in their idea. However, if for some reason a company starts to seem less profitable, the reverse can also happen. If investors think their stock value is going to decline, they'll sell their stocks with the hopes of making a profit before the company loses more value. As stocks are sold and demand for the stock goes down, the stock price falls, and with it, the company's market value. This can leave investors with big losses, unless the company starts to look profitable again. This seesaw of supply and demand is influenced by many factors. Companies are under the unavoidable influence of market forces, such as the fluctuating price of materials, changes in production technology, and the shifting costs of labor. Investors may be worried about changes in leadership, bad publicity, or larger factors like new laws and trade policies. And of course, plenty of investors are simply ready to sell valuable stocks and pursue personal interests. All these variables cause day-to-day noise in the market, which can make companies appear more or less successful. And in the stock market, appearing to lose value often leads to losing investors, and in turn, losing actual value. Human confidence in the market has the power to trigger everything from economic booms to financial crises. And this difficult-to-track variable is why most professionals promote reliable long-term investing over trying to make quick cash. However, experts are constantly building tools in efforts to increase their chances of success in this highly unpredictable system. But the stock market is not just for the rich and powerful. With the dawn of the internet, everyday investors can buy stocks in many of the exact same ways a large investor would. And as more people educate themselves about this complex system, they too can trade stocks, support the businesses they believe in, and pursue their financial goals. The first step is getting invested.
Heaven is the stock market. So if the stock market crashes, right, then you have hell. You know, the banks start need to get bailed out. The people start losing their homes and their minds. It gets total chaos when the stock market crashes, because that is their entire capitalist structure in that particular stock market. But I gotta actually stop, and we're gonna do a part 2 to this so that we could really put everything all into one. So the summary of this, and I'm gonna let Noot add in whatever he has to add in, but the summary of this is that the two witnesses are the Twin Towers, which is a capitalist structure that prophesies their downfall in 2001. In 2001, that led to their downfall, because when the Twin Towers fell, if you know, the stock market crashed as well shortly after. And that represented their two witnesses, because that's where world trading happens. World trade happened in the World Trade Center so that they could witness every single thing that's happening in the entire world. This is why they called it the two witnesses, because they were witnessing everything that happened. Also, when the two witnesses died, they died where everybody could see it. Let's go back to that real quick.
Subproduction.com. 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 subproduction.com.
That particular aspect of the particular aspect of the two witnesses dying, so that people can see them. All right, you guys see that? So when it goes down, it says, now they have finished their testimony. The beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Right? So the beast that comes from the abyss, which is the Middle East, this is who they're talking about. The beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower them and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the public square of the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. New York City is called Sodom and Egypt. Sorry, New York City is called Sodom, Egypt is called New Jersey. If I had a map in front of me, I would show you guys. Where also there was crucified.
I think I put that in my video. That Egypt, Sodom is in New York and Egypt is in Jersey. Yeah, that's in the first chapter 11 video I did. You on point?
Yep. For 3.5 days, some from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial. For 9 months in New York City, people saw the carnage of what had happened to the Twin Towers. There's no two people on the planet as far as people are concerned. Remember I told you there's a spell in the Bible known as anthropomorphism. This is anthropomorphism, where they were given human attributes to non-human entities. So these two buildings were literally in New York City without any cleanup for at least 9 months. This is the 3.5 days that they're talking about. Alright? So for 3.5 days, for some, every child in the nation will gaze upon their bodies and refuse them burial. The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them, will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these two prophets had tormented those who live on earth. Alright? Capitalism torments people. We suffer because of capitalism, especially black people. You understand what I'm saying? And when they talk about sending gifts, they're talking about these what do they call again? Companies like Red Cross. What do they call charities? These charities suck people's monies as gifts because you don't get that back. you give money to a charity, you don't get anything back. So guess what? It's a gift. You understand what I'm saying? Alright. But after the 3.5 days, the breath of life of God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven while their enemies looked on. So basically, after the World Trade was destroyed and cleaned up, and the stock market crashed and things like that, what happened was that they went to build more towers again, right? And heaven, like I told you guys before, is their stock market. So now the stock market is going to become thriving again. Capitalism will live on again. So the Twin Towers falling, it was not the end of it. They came back to life again, basically through trade and stock and things of that nature. But I'm going to stop there. We're going to explain more of this later on. I think we've been on for about 3 hours now. So I want to give time for people to digest exactly what it is that they saw, and to understand the two witnesses were the World Trade Centers. The heaven for them is capitalism, or rather, the Jesus for them is capitalism. That's what's saving their race right now. And we're gonna get into this more. So I appreciate everybody for listening and for understanding and for seeing the metaphysical standpoint, what the Bible is showing us, and it's for us to use as a tool to understand the next move. Also, they're in Revelation 19 right now. You know, Tarnoon gonna get into that. But Revelation 20 is the year 2020. Mm-hmm. So when we break that down, you're gonna see that in the next coming episode. But my name is Noot, Boonoo, Noopooh, and I represent the bone marrow of the Ethiopian race. And thank you for listening. And I'm gonna let Tarnoon close out.
Thank you, Lord. We want to bow our heads and pray. Niggatry. Yeah, that was, like you said, a nice introduction. You know, we like you said, we're in Revelation chapter 19, and that is because a lot of this stuff started in the millennium, like the Illuminati wanted. So Revelation chapter 1 would be equivalent to the year 2000, and in the year 2022 is basically each year is a chapter. So 2000 is Revelation 1, 2001 is Revelation 2, and so forth and so forth, ending in 2022, which is the year that Afro-Uno gave from February 5th, 1962 to 2022, which is 60 years for us. And we're going to get more into it. And I will say this part, the 30 years or the half an hour that the Revelation was talking about, one of the reasons is the Agenda 21, which is from 1992 to 2022, which is that 30 years. When they said it was silence, that's because on one note, it's Agenda 21 has been so quiet that people is not aware that it's even here. And so, but like I said, we're dealing on multiple levels of topics and what these books represent. But like you said, the book, mostly we trying to help y'all understand the financial part of the book of Revelation, which is you talking about the Caucasians specifically in America, and that's what's taking place. Is the war in heaven is these money battles that these different groups are having, which is capitalism. Because remember, say it was a third of angels that fell in the war, And the three main financial systems that's fighting each other is capitalism, socialism, and communism. Those are the three financial things that are fighting. And socialism and communism, because socialism is Russia, communism is China, and those two are fighting against America with capitalism. So they're trying to kill capitalism, and the fight is between them is war, because these people are super rich, and so when these people have wars, collateral damage always takes place, and so these different countries are destroying each other's economy. That's why you see Trump and them tried to make a move with China when they made all that Christmas toys, and Trump made them sit those boats in the harbor and they didn't move, and that meant that China would have lost a whole bunch of money because they spent billions of dollars making all of those fake toys that don't last but 10 days before they break. And so that's what they're doing. They're attacking each other's economy. So that's what Agenda 21 is about. When you strip away all of the fear and the things that, like, we in the middle, we're not even important. That's why if you really look at what Agenda 21 is about, it's about, land grabbing. They dealing with things that cost, dealing with economy, land, water, basically food, shelter, and clothing. That's it. That's all they fighting over. And so that's what Agenda 21 is about. And you have the Caucasian and the Asian, basically you're dealing with the Caucasian and the Asian and even, what is that? Well, that's basically them the only three races, or the two races that's fighting each other right now, like that. I mean, the Arab is in the game. He's a Phoenician, so it's a little bit of all of that. It's the Arabs to an extent, and basically definitely the Russians and the Chinese, and what you would call the American Caucasian over here. So basically, remember that we 19 chapters in the Book of Revelation, and we still have to break all this stuff down within the next 700 days. In order for our people to be prepared to understand what they should do. And again, remember, a race of people, we can't come together until we understand that the spell on the Bible has to be broken in order for you to understand what you got to do. And it's hard to do that when you vampire it on every day. So a part of our liberation is not just mental liberation, but we got to also have creativity, because if you're going to quit being vampired on at Dracula's jobs, then you got to replace it. And that's what liberators do. Liberators destroy and then replace what they destroy. So our people got to become basically entrepreneurs, but it has to be done by way of Noopooh and Noon in order to know how to create. And you have to know what to destroy first. After you learn the correct information, then you know what to do. This is why a lot of these other groups who are dependent on these saviors who have died at the hands of Dracula, whether it was Noble Drew Ali, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, etc., or what his name is, the dude Cooper, who put out Behold a Pale White Horse. You got all types of different saviors that meant well, but Dracula killed them all and then turned them into saints, and you still magnetized by them, because now you like, the government kill such and such, and then the government is so smooth, the Dracula's so smooth, he'll turn them into a saint, and you still being controlled by the person that's dead, because now they control the image. And that's why they did with the Black Panthers and everything else. They kill the leaders at a certain point, and then basically digitally mummified them, and that's a form of death. Back in the day you had pictures, but now they have digital. So now they done mummified Malcolm and all these different martyrs that we have, no matter what race you're in, and they mummified them and turned them into all types of attractions like they do with JFK and Marilyn Monroe. Like every other year, they keep bringing them two back up. You like, well, y'all done killed them. What's the point? But the reason is because it draws economics. It draws people to make a whole bunch of shirts with Marilyn Monroe on it. Stamps get sold. You know, JFK documentaries get brought out. You know, movies keep getting made. Same thing with Hitler. Every other year, you know, they bring Hitler back to life and resurrect Hitler. And then next thing you know is a movie coming out about it. Same thing with black people. They keep making slavery movies. They just resurrect anybody. Dracula don't give a damn. It's all about blood. And money is a form of blood. Because it's the lifeblood of capitalism. So they have to create ways to, you know, to do it. And people still go and watch these movies the same way. They'll keep, you know, going and eating at McDonald's and all after you know that it's not right. That's how you know the spell is deep. When you can show people facts. You know, right now they telling you that McDonald's is selling people eating people, and they still don't care. I still see, you know, people just going ham. So that's showing you that that's what Dracula does. He hypnotizes you in various ways and stimulates you, and that's why people keep going to get bit more and more and more. But don't forget that we're in Revelation chapter 19. It's finna close out. We finna hit the year chapter 2020, which Noot broke that down a little bit. That's 2020, dealing with vision, hindsight. So y'all gonna basically see some things when you look back at this year and be like, man, that really was something. So that's about all I wanted to say. I appreciate everybody for having patience with us. And we'll be back as soon as we can. True me, the Cosmic Peace of War Times. I'm Tara Kenu, the bladder Noopooh, and I represent the bladder of the Ethiopian race, and that's it for me.
Peace.
My name is Noopooh. I represent the bladder of the Ethiopian race.
My name is Boonoo Noopooh, and I represent the bone marrow in the Ethiopian race.
In space, matter, and time, and our race represents that as well.
I like that.
You know, I love my race, and I want to see us, you know, get out of the spells that we're living under right now.
The beginning and the end, which is basically the
Right reason. And sound right reason means pure intelligence.
Always, and let it be known.
Subproduction.com